Welcome to today's class. This is a special class. I'm really excited to give this class. It is something that is so seldom talked about in trading. There's so much energy and effort devoted to, systems and entry points and exits and risk management, and even within the field of psychology, there's talk about how your emotions can lead to irrational decisions and being focused on this and expectations. But one thing that's often completely forgotten about or negated is a person's or an individual's psychology and mindset around abundance, success, and money. And the bottom line is this, is that you are, in wanting to become a good trader and become a successful or professional trader, whatever level of trader you want to become, you are more than likely wanting to become more abundant than you are now. And on top of it, you're communicating that, hey, I want to do something, I want to do it very seriously, and that thing that you're wanting to relate to is money. When you're trading, you're just relating to money in a very unique way that you're normally not used to relating to it. And with that being said, your mentality, your psychology, your mindset around abundance, around money, around success, all comes into play whether you know it or not, whether you see it or not. And it will affect your trading, and it will affect everything in your life that has to do with money, abundance, and success. So that is what this webinar is focused on. We're going to be talking about some real-life stories from my personal life that had a deep impact upon my, quest in search for abundance and greater financial abundance. And it's something that I've taken very seriously. I was very impacted by these experiences, but I've also considered it a training and something that I've taken very, very seriously and been focusing on for years. I put a lot of time and energy into this. And there's a lot of interesting experiences I've had along the way that will be very useful in communicating to you how you can develop the mindset and psychology of abundance. Now, if you have questions at any point in time, I want you to feel comfortable asking them. I'd like to stay focused on the topic, so if you have questions, try and keep them pointed on the topics. And we'll hopefully have time for questions at the end as well. But this is going to be a topic that I think is going to be very unique to a lot of you, and so I want you to feel comfortable asking these questions, should you have any. Well, with that being said, I'd like to go ahead and begin. So thank you all for coming. It's good having you all here, and I'm really excited to be sharing this with you. So I want to start with this. If your mind is not pointing in the right direction, like a compass, your beliefs and thoughts about money, about success, about abundance, about wealth will not support you in your trading. And far more importantly, your work to be successful in life will also not be supported by this. Your mind has to be trained to think successfully, to think abundantly, to have a particular psychology that allows you to relate to these situations. If you don't train your mind in these fashions, in these methods, in these areas, you will never achieve a high level of performance in your trading if you haven't built this mindset. It doesn't matter what system you have. It doesn't matter what, risk reward or other things you have in place. Your mind is the one that's making all the decisions. And if the compass is not pointing right, you may think you're going north and you're actually going east. And that will have a deep impact on your trading. Some of these things will have a crucial effect on your success in trading, are planted and are sitting in your subconscious or unconscious beliefs about money and success and wealth right now. Whether you know it or not, they're there. And they are having an impact on you daily. And so what you're going to have to do is what you have to learn to do is to learn to reprogram your mind about money and success. And so kind of start this up, I want to share an interesting statistic. There was a study done on people in the United States that had won the lottery. And this study was astounding because they found that over 80% of the people that had won the lottery, and we're talking a big prize, tens of millions of dollars, some of them hundreds of millions, over 80% of them within 3 years were broke or right back to where they started. And you're asking yourself, how in the world could that be possible? How could somebody be handed a pile of money, tens of millions of dollars, and 8 out of 10 of them within 3 years will be broke? The answer is that they didn't have the mindset and psychology of abundance. They weren't used to handling that kind of energy, and they ended up making decisions over the next 3 years that ended up destroying all their wealth. It repelled the wealth. It sent it away. They made poor decisions. It's unbelievable. Many of you are probably thinking, my God, I would have been loved to hand that pile of money. And you know what? You were them before they actually won the lotto. They were thinking the same thing. And they were handed that. And you know what? 8 out of 10 of them were just right back where they were 3 years later. And that's because they didn't have the mindset. That's how critical it is. Doesn't matter whether you are given the money. Doesn't matter whether you have all of it. You're handed a big pile of free gift. The bottom line is that if you don't have the mindset to handle it, it will go. It will leave. You won't have it anymore. It will totally go away. Andrea says, very true, cousins won a few mil and were broke within 2 years. Case in point. I want to talk about 3 stories that really impacted my life. And then I want to talk about the 5, I want to talk about not the 5, I want to talk about 5 principles of abundance. I'm not going to really say laws, because I think laws is kind of a fixed way to think about it. And I'm not going to claim that I have omnipotence over this subject. So I'm not going to say, hey, I've made a law about this. But what I am going to say is, these are 5 principles that I've been using for years. I've been working with people for years that have been employing these principles. People are very conscious about their wealth, and I've seen it in action. And for the last 10 years, every single year, my wealth has increased every single year. From the moment I started employing these practices, my wealth has increased every single year without a single year dipping. And so we're going to talk about the 5 principles of abundance. And I think I'm going to answer your question, Boyke, later on, for sure. But let's start with 3 stories. Okay. The first story, I'm going to call this the story of flow. It's about a person named Hamdi that I used to work with. Over a decade ago, I used to work in this restaurant, and I had this owner. His name was Hamdi. And he was very interesting because he didn't come to the West with much. He was from Turkey. And he didn't have a whole lot when he came. He actually first went to Canada when he went west. And he had started off in college and saved a lot of money. And then he put it into a pizza business. And he had a little, like one-room pizza shop type thing. And he built it up to a very successful business. And then he got a bigger business. He got a full-on restaurant in the States, in California. And I got to work with him, and I got to see him in action a lot. And it was interesting because a lot of times people would come in, services that he had paid for, cleaning services and products and things like that. And they would come to him and they would hand him a bill. And they would hand him the bill and they'd say, hey, here's the bill. You have 30 days to pay this, no big deal, 30 or 60 days or whatever, no big deal. Just pay it when you can. And he would stop and he'd say, no. I'm going to pay you right now. He said, hold on a second. And he would go in the back, he'd go get a check, and he'd be out in a minute or two, and he would hand them the check and say, great, here's that. He's like, are we done? He's like, is there anything else? He said, no, your account's good, you're good to go. He's like, you're all good, we'll see you next month. He's like, fantastic, thank you. And I had noticed that he would constantly do this. Anytime a bill came in, anytime something that he owed came in, he would pay it immediately, whether he had a whole lot of money in the bank or he had very little. He was always making sure that as soon as a debt came in, he was always paying it as quickly as possible, immediately if he could. And I asked him about it one day, and I said, I told him, I said, I've noticed this habit you have, about always paying bills and things like that. I'm like, don't you ever feel like you should think about, hey, maybe it's better to pay this one, this one, this one? And he said something very interesting to me. He said, you know what? Debts are like a negative energy. If you think about the nature of a debt, they want to take something from you. They are something that you owe. And it's like a weight. It's like an energetic weight. And he said, I don't want any of that in my life. He goes, I want to pay something off as soon as the bill comes to me, as soon as anything comes to me, I want to be rid of it as soon as possible. And I really thought about it, and I was like, wow, that's very interesting. I never thought of it that way. Sometimes I would say, oh, I'm going to hold off paying this bill because I want to have money for this, or I want to, go out to dinner and this and this and that. But what I didn't realize is that these debts were an energetic weight on my finances. And as long as I owed it, it was kind of like an uncompleted cycle that needed to be taken care of. And I also noticed with Hamdi that because even though money was always coming in, if a bill came in, he'd pay it out right away. And I had observed that one thing that he had mastery of understanding was flow, the flow of money. I go fly somewhere in business class, I don't put it on credit card, I pay cash. When I bought a house, I paid for it in cash. Why? Because I didn't have any debts holding me back. And because I had no debt, all the money that was coming in I could use for whatever I wanted to. So I worked with the concept of reducing those debts, but also making sure that there was a flow happening. And this was something that impacted me very, very strongly. The second story I want to share is the story of the movie Pirate. And the movie Pirate was me. And this is something that I talked about actually 2 weeks ago. But not everybody was here for that. And so I want to share this story again. About 10 years ago, I was working with a client named Philip, and he had cancer. And he knew he was probably not going to make it. And he just realized that I want to have my body be as comfortable as possible. And he wanted to work with me. And at that time, I was a yoga instructor. I was a yoga teacher, and I was also a yoga therapist. I was highly trained in yoga therapy as well. And we started working together. And this was at a time in my life that I had very little money. Very, very little money. Like day to day, I was working hard each day to try and make money that day so I could cover my expenses for that day kind of thing. If at best I had enough money for 3 days at a time. And so I didn't have much. Philip had a lot. He had retired at 40. He was actually a radiologist that invented a technology that was about scanning and imagery and everything like that, and he sold it to Kodak for millions, retired a decamillionaire several times over at 40. The guy had a fantastic house, great family. I'm still friends with his family today, his wife, his kids, very good friends with their family. There's some very dear friends in my life. And as I started working with him, we became more and more friends. We became closer and closer. And one day, we were talking about going to see a movie. It was a new movie that was coming out on Friday, and it was Wednesday. And he said, do you want to go see this movie with us? And I said, I've already seen it. And he asked me, and he was kind of confused. He said, how have you already seen it? It hasn't come out till Friday. I said, I downloaded it off the internet. And he gave me a very intense, serious look open-minded but serious, put down his silverware, and he asked me a question. And he said, "Why did you do that?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Why did you download that movie?" And I said, "Because I wanted to watch it. And yeah, I wanted to watch it, and so I downloaded it. I know a place you can download it for free." And he said, "I understand that part, but why?" And when I thought about it, the real answer was, well, I didn't want to pay for it. And he knew that. And he said to me, he's like, "Look, I'm very conscious about my wealth. And a lot of the people I know are too." And he said, "If you ever want to be wealthy in your life, you will always pay for things. Unless they are gifted to you for free by the owner or the creator, you will always pay for things. By taking something that is not yours, that was not gifted to you, you're not only stealing, but you're taking away the energy of wealth. You're destroying the energy of abundance. Being wealthy and being abundant and conscious about it, you appreciate the resources that you have, and you pay for things if you want something. If you can't afford it, you don't steal it. You don't take it. That destroys abundance. That destroys wealth." And I thought about it very, very intensely. And it really impacted me in a very, very strong way. And I started to think of it. I'm like, oh my God, I've downloaded like hundreds of movies and this and this and that. I'm like, wow, I really have destroyed a lot of abundance and wealth by taking something that wasn't gifted to me. That's something that I should be paying for. And after that, I vowed never to do that again. And in the last 9 years, I did it once, and I felt so horrible, unbelievably horrible about it, because I had worked so hard to build all this abundance and wealth. I could have went to the movie and seen it, and instead I bought a pirated copy of it because I didn't want to take the time to go out to see it, or whatever my excuse was. It was just an excuse, and if you do it the same, it's just an excuse. If you don't have the money for it, that doesn't mean you steal it or take it for free. If it's not gifted to you from the direct creator itself, then you are destroying abundance. And so ask yourself, how many times have you done that? Ask yourself, how many times have you destroyed the energy of abundance? That was a critical story that really affected me. The next one was, this is the last story. This is an interesting story because it happened just less than 2 weeks ago. I'm going to call this the story of fake money. And as you might have guessed, I came in contact with some fake money in Argentina for the first time. Now, I had heard many stories about it, about, oh, you got to be very careful about this and that, and a lot of fake money and things like that. But it just hadn't happened to me while I've been here. But I'd hear about it all the time. And about less than 2 weeks ago, I went to the bank, went to the ATM machine, withdrew roughly $1,000 in Argentinian pesos, and they all came out in hundreds, and I was like, okay, great. I just took it, and that was it. A couple days later, I went to go pay for something that was roughly $500 in US dollars, but in Argentine pesos. And the person who I was buying this from looks at me, and he said, "Esto es falso." And he's trying to say, hey, these are false. And for a moment I was kind of confused because I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, this is false. He's like, these 5 are false. He's like, do you have any that are not false? And I'm like, how are they false? And he put them up to a scanner that a lot of store owners have. And he showed me that it was missing a couple things, and there was some problems with the color. And I was like, my first thought was, holy shit. It was probably the first time, maybe it's happened, I didn't notice it, but it was the first time that I ever realized that I had some fake money on me. And it was actually a lot of, $500, it's a decent chunk of change in fake money. And so, luckily I had more on me, so I checked the areas. He's like, yeah, these are real, you can pay with these. Okay, great. And I went home, and this was after we had talked about, and we decided I was going to be teaching this class on abundance. And so I went home, and I was holding this fake money. and I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. How many of you have ever run into fake money before? How many has ever, you got a fake 20 or fake 10 or fake 100 or whatever country you live in. Has anybody ever had a fake bill before? Anyone? TY says yes. Gabriel, I haven't. Gonzalo, me at the AMT. Dry Desert, never. Noonan, never. Andre, yes. Lana, Gabriel. Okay. Great question. Now, not knowingly. Okay, great. Now, for those of you that did, what did you do with it? Just honest as you can be. I'm exposing myself here. I'm being very honest about other things. Vidar says fake gold. Yeah, okay, fake gold. It's the same thing. But what for those of you that said yes, what did you do with the money? Passed it on. Deposit at a bank, hoping they wouldn't catch it. Throw. Okay, this is an interesting thing. Most people, if I was to interview 1,000 people and say, had you ever come into all over the world, and 1,000 people that had ever received fake money, and asked them what they did with it, I would be willing to bet 8 or 9 or 10 of them, especially if it was a fair amount of money, would have passed it on, would have used it and hope it didn't get noticed. And I sat there for a second and I looked at it and I said, yeah, it's $500, but I thought to myself, I'm like, wait a minute. And my mindset was immediately kicking in, okay, according to the laws of abundance, what should you do with this? And I said, the thing to do is not to pass it on and not to try and turn it into a bank, because you never know, here in Argentina, they may use it, pass it on to somebody else. I had gotten mine out of an ATM machine. Maybe they noticed it, maybe they didn't. Who knows? But the bottom line is, this isn't real money. It doesn't deserve to be in existence. If I pass it on or somebody else uses it, they're going to be using fake money and giving something that isn't real to somebody who thinks they're getting real money and isn't, which is the complete antithesis of abundance. They are going to be using something to pay for something that's not real. And so with that being said, I said to myself, this thing serves no purpose in terms of abundance. Absolutely none whatsoever. And so I tore them all up, destroyed them, and that was it. They're gone. Gabriel has an interesting question. Isn't money, after all, just make-believe? It has worth because we agree it does? Yes, but the problem with fake money is not everybody's going to agree it does. But real money, everybody will always agree, hey, this is worth something. And so it doesn't matter. As long as we have a mutual agreement that this is real money, then it's going to support abundance. But it was obvious that this money wasn't useful because this person wouldn't use it. We didn't agree. All the other bills that were real, they did agree. So the same thing applies. So here I was standing at this maze or the crossroads of abundance and having to really ask myself, what supports abundance and what destroys abundance? And I said, allowing this to continue destroys it. So I said, that's it. And that was that. Hopefully, I was able to stop that hindrance on abundance. This is a very real story. It literally happened to me less than 2 weeks ago. And the reason I was able to make this decision is because my mind has been trained and tuned to think abundantly. I didn't start thinking abundantly when I had money. I started when I didn't and have kept that mindset all the way through. And if anything, I've continued to train it. And so, but if I didn't have that mindset, I would have just passed it on, used it to something else, try and bought something with it. This is how important it is to have the mindset of abundance. Your compass is always tuned towards that. But you have to have it whether you have money or not. It's not, the mindset of abundance doesn't come when it's convenient to you. It has to be there all the time, whether you have money or not. It's not dependent upon what you have and what you don't have. So those are the three stories. Now, with that being said, I want to start getting into 5 principles of abundance. These are 5 principles. I'm not going to say laws of abundance, and I'm not going to say these are all the principles, because we could spend months talking about all the principles in detail. But these are 5 that I think are absolutely critical, that I've experienced and worked with directly, that I'm constantly thinking about working with, building, strengthening, exercising these muscles. This is something that I exercise almost as much as I do trading, if not more sometimes. So let's start to get into these. The first one is called the principle of reciprocity. This is something that actually somebody very successful told me. And he said, if you want to really be abundant, look at people and figure out what you can do for them. Don't think about what they can do for you. Think about what you can do for them. Because remember, you have resources that they probably don't have. Or maybe you have a skill set that they probably don't have. Have you ever met somebody who's not willing to help with anything? Do you really want to work with that person? Do you really want to give them your opportunity or your business? Absolutely not. But when you meet somebody who wants to help people, who does help people, looks for ways to go out of their way, takes their time, their money, their energy, their resources to help people, you want to work with them. That just increases the amount of abundant energy that will come to you and the amount of people that will want to bring things to you and help you and work with you. It's pretty simple. It's a simple law of nature. If you plant seeds and you give them the water, you plant seeds in the right soil and you give them water, you don't have to do anything. Nature will do the rest of the work for you. Just plant the seeds, make sure they got enough water. As long as they have, the resources that they need, they will do what they will grow. Nature will take care of itself. Try and look for ways to help people instead of looking for ways that people should be helping you. This is a very critical thing. By doing that, you will attract a lot more people, resources, energy, and opportunities to you. And that will just overall increase your chance for abundance and attracting abundant opportunities. If you're not rich, imagine you already are to some degree and try and do something for somebody and look for ways to give. Even if it's a small amount, it still matters. Maybe it's your money, maybe it's your time, maybe it's your skill set. But by always looking for ways to give, you are expanding the energy of abundance because you're passing on. It kind of has to do with the flow. You're helping things grow. And when you help things grow, you're increasing the overall energy of abundance, and that will just come back to you naturally. But you can't do it with expectation. Giving is the nature of abundance, but giving with expectation is not. It has to be just giving without any expectation. Maybe you'll never see this person again. Maybe they'll never help you again. I couldn't care. In fact, a lot of times I donate to organizations where I don't really know the people personally, but I know about their cause. I know what they're doing. I don't want to know if they're going to give back to me. I don't really care. I just want to be a part of creating more abundance and helping people, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's a skill set. And a lot of times people ask me for consulting on various projects that don't have to do with trading or finances. Maybe it's starting a business. Maybe it's, working from home. Maybe it's becoming an expert in a particular field. And I'm happy to sit down with them for 1 to 2 hours and talk about it. I'm happy to. I just did that 2 months ago with the guy who was working for the consulate, the Canadian consulate here in Buenos Aires. His term was coming to an end, and he was tired of working for somebody else. He wanted to work independently, he wanted to work from home. And he asked me, he said, how do you do it? He's like, how do you deal with this? How do you deal with this? What resources, technology, things like that? How should I move everything in this direction? And I spent an hour and a half with him I can charge anywhere from $250 to $500 an hour for my services as a trader, depending on the project and what I'm consulting for. But with him, I did it for free. Ironically, 2 days ago, he just emailed me and he said, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I've been taking a lot of steps in that direction. You ever come to Canada or anything like that, happy to take you out, introduce you to some friends and contacts. Definitely appreciate your time. I never expected anything from this guy. I didn't even expect to hear from him again. But yet, that's how it works out. Giving is the nature of abundance. Okay, so that's the principle of reciprocity. And I will get to some of the, let me see here. Is there a couple of questions here again? Philip says, is trading socially useful and a respectable route to abundance instead of contributing to society through other work? This is an excellent question. If you have a skill set, a very unique skill set, and it happens to be trading, then expressing that skill set is critically important to you and your development as a being, because it's something that most times when you have a skill set or a passion, it wants to be expressed, it wants to be fed, it wants to be nourished. And so if that is trading, and you do become abundant through trading, then you can use that abundance to help projects that need funding. Maybe my skill set is trading, and maybe it's not being a manager of a nonprofit organization, but that nonprofit organization maybe needs money. And guess what? I have it. So I'm using my skill set to use my resources and energy to bring more abundance in the environment and the world around me. So it's not so much whether is it socially respectable or not. If you do it in a very unenergetic way, in a criminal way, in a greedy way, in a way that destroys abundance, then it's not going to be very useful. But if you're really good at it, or can become good at it, and you can make a lot of money from this and become very abundant from it, you can use those resources to people who really do need those resources. Bottom line is people need resources. Companies need resources. Organizations need resources. There are plenty out there that are doing really good social work, but they don't have the resources. It's a perfect match. They need you. You can help them. So I think the answer is absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Next principle. This thing's flying fast. I want to try and see if we can get through this. And we're going to be talking about money in this one. But I guess here's the question. It's kind of a tricky question. What attracts money more than anything else? I'm putting this up here because I want to see if I can activate any hot buttons of yours when you see all this money and see what kind of psychology happens. But what attracts money more than anything else? Aviator says your wants. Any guesses? Nobody wants it. Nobody wants to say anything. Keith says money. Roy says money. Sam says money. Anybody else? Nobody wants to guess. Giving value? Greed. Service. Well, in reality, the principle of attraction, the main principle of attraction, which is what we're talking about, like attracts like. What attracts money more than anything else is money. Why do you think a lot of wealthy people know a lot of wealthy people? Why do you think people that have a lot of money are oftentimes working with people that have a lot of money? Money attracts money more than anything else. Like attracts like. You will attract the things which are most closely reflect your energy. Money by itself is a multiplier. It allows you to attract opportunities. Have you ever been in a situation where if you only had some money, if you only had the right amount of money, you could have done something with it, an idea, a project, a business, whatever? I can't tell you how many businesses could have been great if they just had the money to do it. But they didn't. Money creates opportunities, and money by itself is a multiplier. That's why it's easier to make money with money than you making money. You can only work so many hours a day. You got to sleep, you got to eat, you got to take care of all these other things. Money can make money 24/7. But money itself is going to attract money more than anything else. This comes up to an important point. Not greed, I never mentioned greed. And I don't think greed has anything to do with it. Money attracts money more than anything else. But here's the thing about it. If you cannot save money, and this is a fantastic quote somebody shared with me, if you cannot save money, the seeds of greatness and success are not in you. Money is a resource. You're saying, by wanting to become a professional trader, you're saying, I want to trade professionally for a living. I want to make a lot of money. I want to be working with money. But if you can't save money, then how can you ever say, I want to have money? You can't even respect the resource that you're asking to have. By having a certain discipline to not spend on certain things and work on saving money, that money becomes a pool of energy that attracts money to you. Don't believe me? Who do you think has more money than a bank? Not many people, mostly banks and institutions and countries. Because they have a lot of money, they attract a lot of money. Money attracts money. If you look at a bank, most of the time, money's going in, not coming out. Same thing with a casino. Money's coming in, not coming out. And so, with that being said, it is critical you learn how to not spend so much and learn how to save this energy. Learn how to build a pool of energy. By building that pool of energy, you will attract more money to you. It will be like a magnet that is constantly attracting more money to you, more resources to you, more energy to you. I guarantee that if you learn to save every single month, even if it's $5, when I started this tactic 10 years ago, I literally started my savings account with $12. And by the end of the month, I had 17. And I just constantly put in money to it. And over the years, I noticed I started attracting financially larger and larger situations. Pretty soon I went from $5 to a few $100s, and then from a few hundred to 1,000. Now I could go on a nice trip and do a few things, and I could buy a few more things or invest in something. Pretty soon those thousands became tens of thousands. Pretty soon that increased again. Pretty soon I'm standing in the room with Deca millionaires, people worth $250 million. I couldn't have sat in the room with them 10 years ago because I didn't have the energy or mindset or the abundance, because I didn't have that level of energy to relate to them. In fact, it recently happened to me about a year and a half ago when I got involved in a project, and I actually had to work with a couple billionaires. And even though I'm a pretty wealthy guy, 95 to 99% of the people I run into, I have more money than them. I was now going into a situation where I was like, whoa, wait a minute. These are some heavy players. I've dealt with some big players before, but billionaires, that's a new thing for me. And so what did I immediately do? I immediately realized that I had to train my mindset to be able to relate to them on their level, to think like they do. I guarantee you a billionaire is going to think completely different than somebody who's only worth 100,000 or even 10,000. They have a completely different mindset. Not just about life, but about buying things, about abundance, about money. It's completely different. So I had to actually exercise my mind and retrain my mind so that when I was going into these meetings, I was thinking on the same level with them. Because if I wasn't, they would have noticed it and been like, not interested in you. You're not on our, you can't relate to us. You don't understand. You're not the same level. They want to work with people who can match their energy or bring energy to them. The problem is when you're a billionaire financially, there's not many people that can outdo your energy. So they're going to want somebody who's going to at least match it or bring some really good energy to that situation. I had to retrain my mind to up it a level so that when I was in the room with them, I wasn't intimidated. I wasn't thinking, about the possibilities of what could happen if I nailed this deal or whatever. It was very simply, you know what? I need to match this guy so that him and I can communicate on the same level. And that was that. And so, yeah, I could relate to people who were 5 million, 10 million, 250 million, but $1 billion was different. Money attracts money more than anything else. And if you're not able to save money, then you're not going to be able to build that wealth and that abundance to higher and higher levels so that you can think like that, so that you can relate to that situation, so that you are familiar with that situation. If you don't have experience with that, you're not going to have much context to relate to. So by building that pool of money, you will show, A, that you have the discipline to relate to abundance, but you also attract more opportunities to you. And there will be more opportunities available to you as well. Next one, the principle of repulsion. Have you ever been driving down the street on the highway? You see a car that's like kind of dented, pretty banged up from an accident. And from what you can tell, the fact that they've taped up certain things pretty much tells you that that thing's been broken for a little bit. It's not been broken just like yesterday. It's been broken for a while. They put tape on the window. They've done this and this and that. That is something that is going to repel money from you. Having no money has a disdain effect. So the try to is, where do you have a photo? Sorry, I didn't mean to break the discussion, but that's pretty damn funny. I have to admit, that's one of the better ones there. Having no money has a disdain effect. If you have no money, people are not going to generally, or for the most part, people that have money are not going to want to work with you. They're not going to be like, yeah, that's somebody I want to give my money to. Because they're like, wow, this guy doesn't respect energy or abundance or money. He doesn't know how to save it or build it. Why should I work with this guy? They don't have the energy to do it. You know, and so you're going to repel opportunities by having no money. You drive away opportunities by having no money. It's interesting. In the United States, we are actually in what is called negative savings. That means that if somebody is making $100,000 a year, they're spending between $105,000 and $120,000. Financially, I think we can all intelligently realize that's not good. We have to finish in 2 minutes? Are you kidding me? No. You're kidding me, Vicky. Really? Are you recording the next one? Oh, no. Well, I guess we might have to do part 2. All right, well, Vicky, can we do a part 2? Vicky and Maud, are you okay with that? Because I'm barely halfway done. Yes? Fantastic. All right, great. We have a win-win. I want you to really think about those stories that I talked about. Think about all the times in your life that you were faced with that situation and what decisions did you make. And then think about how you can change that in the future. How from here on out you can commit to being more abundant, to acting more abundant, to having the mindset of abundance, the psychology of abundance. I want you to start thinking about all the things that you have done in your life or are doing in your life that don't attract it but repel it, that negate it, that reduce it, that harm it. And then start thinking about things that you can do to help reverse that process. What we're going to do is, for next week, we're going to continue with part 2. We're going to start off again with the principle of repulsion because I want to explain it in detail. And then we're going to go over the last 2 principles. And again, these are not the only 5. There's a lot. This is a big subject. We could go on and on and on. But these are 5 that I find to be most important and most critical. And so we're going to spend some time going over principles 3, 4, and 5. And then we're going to go over some final thoughts about the mindset of abundance, how this affects your trading. And so that's what we're going to finish with next week. So with that being said, thank you all very much for coming to this. And Market Timer says, need to see a man about my new car. That is funny. I downloaded this off iStock Photo. Yeah, I was like, okay. I tried to actually search for something that was like a wreck or disaster or something like that, and this is what came up. But with that being said, spend some time thinking about this over the next week, and we will continue part 2 next week, and we'll go over the remaining principles, some other techniques that you can use, how this can affect your trading, and how you can change all this. And I paid for it. I didn't download it for free. I paid for it. iStock Photo, you have to buy credits, and then you buy so many credits based on what they rate the photo, and then they say, hey, this is 10 credits, so it'll cost you this much. Okay, great, so there you go. So yeah, of course, iStock Photo, you have to pay for your photos. So with that being said, I want to thank you all very much for coming. It was fantastic having you here. Think about it. Whatever questions you have, Philip, I want you to save your questions. Whatever questions I didn't get to, I want you to think about them, save them for next week, and then when I come back next week, I want you to re-give me those questions. Write them down. We will talk about them next week for sure. We can finish everything and then spend a lot of time answering questions. So think about them very seriously. I bid you all adieu. I thank you very much for this class. I thank FX Street for this as well. Round of applause for them as well. Thank you all very much. I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and I wish you all an abundant time between now and then. Thank you. Have a good day.